I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have for this book review, but there's something about doing book reviews that when you put these reviews out immediately after you finish a book, it's hard not to rate them higher than what you know they probably should be in your book or in your review, because they're still so fresh on your mind. And when I was rating this book, I had just finished it. I just closed that last page, and I didn't want to rate it as highly as I did. But when I was rating it, I couldn't help myself. It didn't feel right giving it anything less than what I did end up rating it. So The Hero of Ages is easily one of the most entertaining books that I've read so far. It was absolutely insane. You know, I've said it probably half a dozen times already about Brandon Sanderson's ability to write these twists and turns that you don't see coming. But the important part, the best part about it, is that not only do you not see them coming, you can go back and see the signs that he has laid that these things are coming, right? I like to compare it to Pierce Brown because Pierce Brown's the only other author I've read that is known for his twists. And Pierce Brown just doesn't lay as many breadcrumbs, right? He doesn't lay as many breadcrumbs about these twists coming, but Sanderson definitely does, and it's really, really cool to see these things happen. For example, these little excerpts at the beginning of each chapter. I remember I was like halfway through the book, and I remember reading them and seeing the language that was being used and stuff. And I remember thinking, that sounds like Sazed, right? That sounds like him. That sounds like the way he would talk. But I had totally forgot by then, right? Because then I realized when he started talking about Vin and stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely Sazed writing after the fact. Maybe after they've won the history of everything that they'd been through. But I had totally forgot that it starts off by him saying, I am unfortunately the hero of ages. I forgot that he said that. So whenever it gets revealed at the end that he is the hero of ages, I was just sitting there like, what? This is insane, right? I made this meme when I had about 2 chapters left in the book. And, it's pretty much obsolete by the next 2 chapters, because Sazed himself becomes not, a god, not a part of a whole. He becomes the god, right? It's this god of creation. And the fact that, the metal mines and all of his knowledge goes into this stuff, it's just insane. Elend gets his freaking head cut off, and I just can't do it. It was so intense. It was so cool. The only part that was like, I guess less cool, or not less cool, but just more difficult for me to feel excited about while I was reading, was when Elend and his soldiers are fighting against these, 200,000 Kolos or however many there are. It was just hard for me there was just so much happening. It was such a big flood that I was like, oh man, this is, I was kind of like, oh, this is cool. I was able to recognize how cool it was. I just didn't get a feeling from it. And that might be partly because I was also reading it while taking care of my kids at the time. And so I kept having to put it down and, spend time with them. So I wasn't able to really read it completely through. But still, it at the beginning of this journey, I was not expecting to enjoy this story as much as I did. I mentioned in my first review that I just couldn't really get through that first book. It was a chore. It took me 2 months to get through that first book. But, you know, here I am, and it is amazing. It was a great feeling, and you know, I almost cried. I mentioned that in my last review for Well of Ascension, that there was a part of this book that I almost cried at, and I didn't think that I would almost cry at that part. Well, there was a few more, right? Obviously towards the end there, but it was the part that I was talking about in the last review was this moment when Elend has gotten all the extra Kolos, and he's walking back towards Fadrix City, and he's walking through the ash, and it's up to his waist, and he's just kind of a zombie just walking, and it's nighttime, and there's this deep red, you know, billowing glow of this ash mount, right? This volcano in the distance, and he's just walking kind of in silence, listening to the rumbling of this volcano, and seeing the red glow on the horizon, and ash is falling from the sky, and it's up to his waist, and his Kolos army are behind him. Just walking silently as well. And something happens where he realizes, man, it's really over, isn't it? The world is completely over. There's nothing. What am I doing this for? Why am I doing this? And he falls to his knees, and the ash goes up to his chest, and he just completely gives up. He completely gives up in that moment, and it almost comes out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy, but you still feel it, right? Like, whoa, this is insane. This is so depressing. And then Preservation shows up. The last little sliver of Preservation's body shows up and starts motioning to him, and it talks about how it kneels in the ash next to him, and he, you know, Elend suddenly jumps up in defensive position. He's like, oh, what's going on? And he's talking to Preservation, and you can see this emotion, this very human emotions portrayed in Preservation as they're kind of, you know, frustrated and feeling broken themselves and lost because they can't communicate with Elend properly, and Elend's trying to figure it out, and then Preservation fizzles out, and Elend's like, you know, that was weird, but he takes the information and he moves on, the information he was able to discern. And there's this, the next excerpt that we get from Sazed is talking about how that was the end. That was the end of that god. Elend just saw a god die, and he didn't even realize it. You know, it says if Elend had waited just a little bit longer, he would have seen a body appear in the ash. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to look it up. I'm not sure why the body was described. Right? It was described what the body looked like. If it's a spoiler for different points of the Cosmere, I don't want to look it up, but maybe I will, just to see. I know that Ruin's body probably is a spoiler for the Cosmere, because it talks about how he had bright red hair, and Sazed's like, I'm just going to ignore that and move on. So I remember thinking, okay, something about that's important. But yeah, that moment was just so emotional for me. It was so sad. But, you know, I loved it. It was just one of many things that really pushed this book over the edge into what I decided to rate it, which I decided to give it a rating of a 10 out of 10. It's only the third book that I've given a rating of a 10 out of 10 in the last 14 books that I've read. And I'm pretty tough on these ratings. Like I said, I didn't want to give it a 10 out of 10, but it just didn't feel right not giving it that. And so I'll give you guys some more details on how I like to rate these books. When I'm, now that I've officially, because this book I finished officially 1 year after I started this journey last June, in June of 2023. And so the next video I post after this one should be a ranking of all of the books that I've done prior to this, all the books that I've read this past year. I'm going to rank them. I'm going to go through, I'm going to look at my the ratings that I gave them, and I'm just going to, you know, put them on a tier list like people like to do, and I'll upload that. Then next year, when I do that next year's tier list, I'm actually going to redo this first tier list and do it as more of a hindsight thing. You know, giving them more accurate ratings instead of just my initial thoughts on them. Some books might move up, some books might move down. But yeah, this book, this trilogy was amazing. I'm still not sure if I want to read the rest of the Cosmere, but I just might have to. I just might have to after this, and I'm going to read them in the suggested reading order as well. Next up, I'm currently reading. Next up, I am currently reading The Three Body Problem. I'm going to move over into some sci-fi. I'm going to read that trilogy. Give it some ratings. That should get me through a few months, and yeah, we'll see where I go from there. Maybe I'll jump into another Sanderson novel. Who knows? But yeah, right now that's the plan so far. Three Body Problem, amazing. I'm gonna get through it pretty quick too because it's a pretty short book. But yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching. 10 out of 10, right? 10 out of 10. Thanks for watching. That's all I got. See y'all in the next one. Adios.